I'm the Amateur Logician from amateurlogician.com, and together we're going to think about the law of contradiction with the help of Aristotle and the metaphysics, with the help of the great philosopher and theologian Garrigou-Lagrange. We're going to consider a part of an essay in the book Philosophizing in Faith, and with the help by the great archbishop and very popular broadcaster from many, many years ago, Fulton Sheen, in his very first book, God and Intelligence in Modern Philosophy, which parenthetically happened to be his PhD thesis. Now, if we think about the law of contradiction or the law of identity, and if we think about denying those laws, it seems that all intelligibility about the world is frankly destroyed. Now, perhaps the most basic statement possible is this: whatever that is, is. Once again, whatever that is, is. And next in line would be being is and non-being is not. So these statements immediately raise both the law of identity and the law of contradiction. If we deny these laws, then all intelligibility is destroyed, since being can then be regarded as the same as non-being. And if we quote Aristotle in the metaphysics deals with the study of being. It's about general truths about being as such. It deals with issues like modality, essence, identity, persistence, causation, substance. And because all that exists is a being, that is to say, it exists, ontology or metaphysics is broader than and deeper than any of the empirical sciences. Philosophy is thus both antecedent to and presupposed by the empirical sciences such as physics, chemistry, or biology. And he talks about the law of contradiction with these lecture notes. So here Aristotle says, it is impossible for the same thing at the same time both to be in and not to be in the same thing in the same respect. We can tell right away that if we say X is P and X is non-P, those two statements contradict each other. They cancel each other out. So if one is true, the other cannot be true. So it's impossible that both are true simultaneously. But this gives rise to the ontological foundations and the logical foundations of this law. So this is not only a law of thought, and this is a point that Garrigou-Lagrange stresses. It's a law of extramental reality. Our minds are designed to think, and in that sense aim at understanding being. So the ontological form of the law of contradiction precedes its logical form. So the former deals with being as such, and the latter deals with propositions that we can form in our minds, like S is P and S is not P. Those two propositions cannot both be true. So here, for instance, Garrigou-Lagrange writes, the first object known by our intellect is the intelligible being of sensible things and its primordial opposition to non-being. The first principles are laws of thought, only because they are first laws of being and of reality. From the outset, it is utterly clear that reality cannot at once be reality and non-reality. The ontological formulation of the principle of identity/contradiction, that is being, non-being is non-being, being is not non-being, thus precedes its logical formulation. One cannot at one and the same time, from the same perspective, affirm and deny one and the same attribute of one and the same subject. So that is Garrigou-Lagrange. And then we can get into Fulton Sheen, who also talks about these laws of thought, or you might say these are first principles. So here Fulton Sheen talks about the first principles. So for instance, Fulton Sheen writes, everything is intelligible only in function of being. In the ontological order, being is first, and without being, nothing is known. He continues, a judgment is the composition and division of concepts. The first judgment in the ontological order, in the sense of being the most fundamental, must be a judgment of affirmation, and the second a negation, for there is no modality more ultimate than that of affirmation or negation. The supreme judgment will therefore be, being is, non-being is not. This principle of identity is not purely tautological. He continues, in the logical order, this principle states the impossibility of affirming and denying the same attribute of a subject at the same time and under the same formal relation. In the real order, it states the impossibility of a thing being and not being at the same time and under the same formal relation. The principle is valid for both orders, the logical and the real. And the real is the ontological order, or the metaphysical order. Ideas attain things in the sense already defined. There's no question of a separation of the two orders. Furthermore, to reduce the being to a subjective form of the mind, and the principle of contradiction to a merely simple logical law, and not an ontological one, is to identify two notions which are manifestly distinct: the impossible, or unrealizable, and the inconceivable. It also means to doubt the extra mental possibility of the absurd. He who doubts the ontological value of the notion of being and the principle of contradiction ought to say, a square circle is inconceivable, but is not unrealizable outside of the mind. This first principle is valid in both orders because being is valid and necessary in both orders. He later continues, the first principle of thought is the foundation of all of our intellectual constructions. So that is Fulton Sheen. And we also talked a little bit about Garrigou-Lagrange's comments on the laws of thought, and very briefly, Aristotle from the Metaphysics. Now, I'm the Amateur Logician from amateurlogician.com. I have an extensive tutorial on traditional verbal-style scholastic logic at my website. You can read it for free. If you like this type of content, please consider buying me a cup of coffee. I would really much appreciate it. In the future, I would like to create some worksheets and also design some full-blown courses. For example, on the trivium, on grammar, on rhetoric, on different aspects of logic, maybe even some metaphysics, or on writing, or something like this. In any case, thank you so much for watching. Again, if you enjoy this type of material, please visit my website. Consider buying me a cup of coffee. You can also sign up for free to my newsletter. Until next time, be well.